Don't contact me in July. I am not meeting up with you. I am busy, I am seated, and I am reading 24 hours a day. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be going through all of the 2025 book releases that I'm excited for, and goddamn, this list is really long. It's like over 35 books, and that's just me kind of like jotting down things that I kind of had on my radar. I think if I did a deep dive I'd probably find way more, but I think I'll include them in a part 2 or something, because already this is going to be so juicy to get into. As I'm posting this at the end of January, obviously we've missed a whole month from 2025, but luckily I've already read quite a lot of January 2025 releases, so I will include them in this video and just let you know like some of my thoughts, or if I haven't read it yet, how excited I am to read them. If you have any books coming out in 2025 that you're really excited about that I've included or not included, please leave them in a comment down below so we can have a little chat about them. Starting off in January 2025, I'm going to try and go in chronological order of the publishing release dates as much as possible, just to keep it easier for us to track and add to our calendars. So firstly, on the 2nd of January we had A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. This is Babel with dragons, set in a 1920s London where our main character accidentally starts a civil war and then is drawn in to try and end the war. And to do this, because she studies the languages of dragons, the government are using her to try and break the secret dragon code. I talked about it a little bit in my previous video. I did really enjoy this, but I think the writing style very much falls between middle grade and YA, so it felt a little bit young for me even though it was a YA fantasy. So I think if you're going into it, just have that in mind. It is very accessible, however, so if you have a young person in your life, or you just want something that's going to be very easy to read and very easy to follow, I think this one's perfect. There's also a little bit of a romance in there, which is very much a subplot, but was also very fun. On the 7th of January we had Immortal by Su Lin Tan. I love this book, my first favourite read of the year, and I would definitely recommend it. It's a fantasy romance set in the same world as Daughter of the Moon Goddess. The story follows our main character Li Yan, who's just become the ruler of her mortal kingdom, and she enters into a very tenuous alliance with the god of war. The two have very good chemistry, great banter. Over the story you see how their relationship grows, but also how they deceive each other and try to get over that. Such a perfect fantasy romance. It's a standalone as well, so if you're looking for a book to start this year, you better read that one. It's super magical, and I love Su Lin Tan's writing. Also on the 7th of January we have Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. I literally finished this a few days ago and I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's a horror slash lit fic, so it is a little bit spooky if you're not into that. This one is a very wild pick from me, but I just loved it so much I had to include it. This book explores the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, and specifically the treatment of Asian Americans during that time. Within the story as well there's an element of East Asian folklore, which is the story of the hungry ghost and how that starts to come to life in the real world. So I hope that you'll pick this one up if you can stomach a horror. I really loved it. I think it's going to be one of my favourite books of this year, and Kylie Lee Baker is definitely going to be an author that I check out more. I thought her writing was addictive, I thought her storytelling was great, and this was just a very well done story. 14th of January we had Water Moon by Samantha Soto Yambao. This one I keep describing as a Studio Ghibli film. If you're someone that liked The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, you're going to eat this book up. Everything about this book is very dreamy, from the way the main characters jump into puddles to get into other worlds and walk across bridges and dream realms to go between day and night. I adored it. I just think it was a beautiful concept. It explores what you would give up to get rid of your deepest regrets, and the choices that we make, the choices that we don't make, and the regrets that come along with that. The whole book was extremely beautiful. I mean, the cover is beautiful, the writing was beautiful, and there's also a romantic subplot if you need that in your books as well. On the 16th of January we had The Favourites by Lane Fargo, and I read this last year. It was one of my favourite books of 2024, so please read this year because you won't regret it. It's a mix between Wuthering Heights meets Daisy Jones and the Six, but our main characters are Olympic figure skaters and they are extremely messy. Like, the two get to the height of their careers and they're in a relationship. However, something happens one day and the two basically like break up, like they don't compete anymore. And then 10 years later they're finally making a documentary about what happened. So we get that Daisy Jones and the Six style of storytelling where we're seeing everything happening in interviews in between the story story chapters. We're getting this very like dramatized story from everyone who knew this couple and who knew what was happening behind the scenes and that wasn't being shown in front of the cameras. So I think if you're someone that also really liked Magnolia Parks, like the kind of toxic cycle and very like drama fueled Gossip Girl kind of vibes, then I think you'll really like The Favourites, and you won't be ready for all of the plot twists that happen in this. Honestly, I couldn't catch a breath. Every single chapter ended on something wild. Lane Fargo is definitely an author I'll be checking out in the future because I adored this book. 21st of January was a lot of people's most anticipated read of the year, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. She's finally here. I wish I could be excited for it, but I haven't read Iron Flame. So as we speak right now, I am rereading Fourth Wing to then go on to Iron Flame and then finally be able to reach Onyx Storm. But who knows if I'll get to Onyx Storm without seeing a spoiler, because there's a lot going around at the moment. Also, side note, I just love the excitement around this release. I think it's really special when literally readers all around the globe, you can feel the tension in every bookshop. Everyone walking into any bookshop is looking for Onyx Storm. I think there's something really fun about that. And all the midnight release parties, I am definitely going to go to one for the fourth book. Like, that would be so fun. 23rd of January is Cruel is the Light by Sophie Clarke, and I read this as well at the end of last year. I did really enjoy it. It is demons and exorcists, but everything is set in Vatican City. I adore this cover. It's one of the main reasons why I wanted to pick it up early and make sure I could get a review out. I will say that I enjoyed the banter in this. They have kind of like a push and pull relationship, but they're forced to work together obviously for their own particular reasons, but at times I wasn't like fully convinced on their romance. But at the same time, I've seen reviews where people are raving about it, so it may just be a me problem. But I think it has a really unique concept. If you're someone that likes supernatural elements in their fantasy books, then this is definitely one to check out. So January 30th, if you're a thriller fan, Till Death might be up your alley. This is by Basayo Matuluko and it just sounds so fun. I'm literally going to be reading it this week, and it's about our main character who's obsessed with murder mysteries, and she goes to her cousin's wedding in Nigeria, but the bride's getting sent all of these like anonymous threats, and our main character has to be the one to help solve who is doing this and why they want to sabotage the wedding. It's all set in Lagos in Nigeria, and I'm just really excited to see what this one's going to be like. Okay, now we're going on to February. First up we have Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, and there has not been one Ali Hazel book that I haven't liked. Like even The Love Hypothesis I gave 3 stars. I liked it. I didn't think it was amazing, but I liked it. Everything since then has almost been a 5-star, because there's something so comforting about Ali Hazelwood's recipe of books and how she writes these stories that you just slip right into anything she writes. Like I really wasn't sure how she would pull off Bride because it was so different to everything else she had released, but I loved it. Like at the time I remember thinking whether this would be my favourite Ali Hazelwood book, but it might be Deep End. I've already seen some really good reviews for it, and from what I know it's kind of like a swimmer and a diver, and the two have a steamy relationship for mutually beneficial reasons. Someone's gonna comment and be like, Sam, you're so way off with that. I'm obsessed with this cover. I'm upset that this book isn't called Wet with a H, because that was what Ali Hazelwood wanted to call it, or at least it was like her working title, and her publisher was probably like, no, who's gonna buy a book called Wet with a H? So then they chose Deep End, which is also, I guess, a fitting title, but in my head this book is called Wet with a H. Also on the 4th of February is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, and I finished this also a few days ago. This one I was so excited for because it's The Selection by Kira Cass meets The Cruel Prince by Holly Black meets These Hollowed Vows by Lexi Ryan, all the while being wrapped in like a Bridgerton bow. Are you getting the vibe? Like, it's set in like 18th century England. The whole of England is ruled by an immortal fey queen, and she gives out these bargains to everyone, but obviously at a price. And then one year she's like, hey all the girls debuting, you can try and win the hand of my lovely son. So our main character enters into these competitions to win the hand of the prince, in order to try and save her family. Obviously the girls in these fantasy books are always doing the most. They're just trying to save their families, and I respect that. Coming in from future Sam, who forgot to include this book, this is Iron and Embers, and it comes out on the 6th of February. I'm super excited for this one, and I was going to go straight into it, but then I realised that there was like a prequel series that you should kind of read first before you get into this. Apparently you can go straight into this if you want to, but I really like to read in chronological order. So I ordered the previous series, and it's called Blood and Steel, and I think there's only maybe 4 books in this series, so I thought, you know what, if I'm going to get into Helen Shurer's work, I do kind of want to read it like chronologically. This one is about an alchemist turned assassin who finds solace in only one thing, seeking vengeance for the death of her fallen friends. But when there's this strange new poison that enters into this kingdom, she's offered up a spot at this like ancient alchemy academy, and I'm really into it. Apparently this is meant to be enemies to lovers, sizzling chemistry, and great world building, which is all I want from my fantasy romances. But like I said, I think I'm going to read the series before I do this one, but this one is out in February. From Future Sam again, I've got Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This one has a gorgeous cover. I think this is the main reason I wanted to pick it up. It's completely beautiful gothic vibes, but on the front it says, "For what do you hunger?" and it looks so good in pink shiny foil. This one is meant to be a sapphic reworking of Camilla, which is the story that inspired Dracula, and I don't know if that's common knowledge, but I had no idea about that. It says here that it's set against the violent wilderness of the peaks and the uncontrolled appetite of the Industrial Revolution to create a captivating story about appetite and desire. And I think if you're someone that likes gothic romance, this might be a good one for you, but I have it on my TBR for February. On the 10th we have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man, which is the kind of sequel to Vera Wong's Unsolicited Guide for Murderers. It's a cozy murder mystery with an older Asian lady as the protagonist of the story, and basically it's her trying to solve the murder that happened in her tea shop, and while she's doing that, all of her like proposed suspects kind of become her found family. And yeah, I just found it really heartwarming. If you're someone that needs a good audiobook to listen to that's not fantasy, I would definitely recommend Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. The audio narrator is perfect, and I hope that they use the same narrator for the second book. First Time Caller by BK Borison comes out on the 11th of February, and so far all I've seen are 5 stars across the board for this book, like infinity stars. However, I don't actually know what it's about. A hopeless romantic meets a jaded radio host in this cozy, sleepless in Seattle inspired love story from beloved author BK Borison. And you know what, I'm gonna read it because so many of my friends who I trust, if they're giving this book infinity stars, I'm gonna die for this book. And it comes out on the 11th of February, so just in time for Valentine's Day. So this is going to arrive at the perfect time to be my date for Valentine's Day, and I am not mad about it. Also on the 11th of February, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. Guys, I've got a double date for Valentine's Day. I have loved the Emily Wilde series from book 1, from the day it arrived in the fairyloot box on my doorstep. I loved her. It's cozy, light academia between a researcher who studies fairies and her rival who she suspects might actually be a fairy, but no one will believe her. And the two go on this kind of expedition in this cold, wintry village, and everyone doesn't like her. And then one day when her rival shows up, everyone loves him and she's mad about it. And over the course of the book, they realise they might have more in common than they thought. She's extremely grumpy, he's extremely sunshine. I actually hope that this won't be the end of the series. Hopefully the author will do more in this world. So maybe I'll message Heather Forsett and I'll just let her know that she should write like another series. 2 books coming out on the 11th of February. I'm sorted for the weekend of Valentine's Day. On the 13th of February we have Cursebound by Sarah El-Arifi, and this is the sequel to Feybound. And I loved Sarah El-Arifi's other series called The Final Strife. It's very dark, it's very gritty. So when I went into Feybound, I don't think I loved it as much as The Final Strife, which kind of affected my reading experience. But the Feybound does end on a crazy cliffhanger, so I'm excited to pick up Cursebound. All I can remember from Feybound is that there's Fae and there's elves, and also our main character is bonded to like this special mythical animal. Perhaps I might need to reread Feybound before I go into this one. On the 18th of February it is The Rebel Witch by Kristen Sigarelli, and that is the sequel to The Crimson Moth, or if you're in the US it's called Heartless Hunter. I adore this duology. I've actually already read The Rebel Witch, so I've included it on my list to remind you that you need to read The Rebel Witch, or if you haven't read The Crimson Moth, you need to get on that too. It is a perfect YA fantasy romance duology, and it's between a witch hunter. She's a witch that's fallen in love with a witch hunter, and he's a witch hunter who doesn't know he's fallen for a witch. She's a witch vigilante in disguise in like high society, and he doesn't know that she is the exact person that he's been hunting all of these years because he hates witches. But obviously in high society she's all prim and proper, and the two fake date because he starts suspecting she might be the vigilante, while she is just trying to get close to him to get his secrets. Elite tension, elite angst, they have amazing chemistry. It's the only book that I've read in a while where book 2 was so much better than book 1. Like book 1 was good, but then book 2 was like incredible. But honestly, the romance was so perfectly done. I was bawling my eyes out at the end. Would definitely recommend. So on the 27th of February we have Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stephen, and I have actually read this one as well. It's a YA fantasy standalone, which its core premise is these two people who are constantly reincarnated and meet each other in every life but have to unalive each other also in every single one. I was like, what a beautiful premise. Apparently the author got this idea while listening to Exile by Taylor Swift, and I was like, perfect vibes, like I'm gonna eat this up. The story is told across, you know, centuries, millennia, and we're getting little snippets on all of their lives that they've lived in different bodies, in different genders, in different countries, in different, you know, with different cultures and religions and everything like that. So we're seeing their love story and how it spans across that whole time. And throughout the whole book, you're kind of working out why it is that they're stuck in this loop and why it is that they have to constantly unalive each other when all they want to do is live happily together. So I think it's a very strong standalone book. So I think it's an incredible standalone, and what it achieves in just one book, honestly, you have to read it to experience it. I rated it 4.5 stars. I thought that the twist at the end was a little tad a bit wild, but I just know that if I read it when I was like 15, 16, it would have been the only thing I could think about. I would have been on the floor gagged. So let's get into March. 4th of March we have Rag Picker King by Cassandra Clare. This is the sequel to Swordcatcher, and it's Cassie Clare's first debut into adult fiction, and I found the first book of this very dense. I think I will definitely take more in on a reread. It has that Cassie Clare charm, but not as much as The Infernal Devices, which is my favourite series from her. So there was something missing where I didn't love it as much as the Infernal Devices series, or even the Dark Artifices, but I will be picking up the Rag Picker King at some point. Then also on the 4th of March we have Fable for the End of the World by Ava Reid. Ava Reid is one of my auto-buy authors. I love The Wolf and the Woodsman, I love Juniper and Thorn, I love A Study in Drowning. She just has a very atmospheric writing style that every time I read something of hers makes me really feel like I'm there within the story and very present. She has a very thoughtful way of writing and a very beautiful writing style, so I'm looking forward to seeing what she does in this book. Also from Future Sam, I've got The Cursed Melodies by Connie Glynn. I think Connie Glynn's written a lot of children's books, and this is her first venture into the young adult space. This book also has such a cool premise. I feel like that about all the books I'm talking about, but especially this one. It follows a set of twins. They have a very interesting and strange bond with nature. It says here that flowers whisper instructions and trees sing of their histories, and the two are kept away from nature by their caretakers because of like this weird kind of like perceived demonic link with nature. And then we follow a separate character called Gwen, who has only ever wanted to study at an academy that specifically teaches, I guess, these people how to keep the mundane and the magical worlds intact and in harmony. I think somehow all three paths collide and they realise they have way more magic than they thought they did. And it seems quite short, so I think I'll eat it up in one sitting. Guys, mark your calendar. We've got Oathbound by Tracy Dion, which is book 3 in the Legendborn series. I'm a little bit behind. I haven't read Bloodmarch yet, but if you also haven't read the Legendborn series, you honestly really need to. It's one of the most unique YA fantasy series out there, and it blends in the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table in a really interesting way where you won't see any of the twists coming. Another one from Future Sam. This one I've had on my radar for so long and I can't believe I forgot to include it in my initial list. It's called The Prince Without Sorrow. We follow a prince who defies his emperor father because he doesn't agree with the fact that his father's trying to wipe out all of the witches, and we have another main character who is one of those witches who vows to get retribution for the murder of her family, and so she casts this curse that that affects absolutely everyone and leaves the two grappling for power. It just sounds like such a fun dynamic and a really interesting premise, and I can already tell I'm going to adore this. So now we are on to April, and haters are going to say that this video wasn't all filmed on the same day, but don't listen to them. So the first book of the month, literally on April 1st, is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I have never read an Abby Jimenez book, and apparently she's like a romance queen similar to Talia Hibbert and Ali Hazelwood. Everyone that I know that has read her books literally calls them their favourite romance books of all time, so I am very excited to start reading her books this year. She has 3 other romance books out right now which are part of like an interconnected series: Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer. So before I go on to Say You'll Remember Me, I definitely want to read those first. I'm very excited to tackle all of her books this year. You definitely don't have to read them in order, but I'm someone that likes to read chronologically, so I will be going through them in publication order. This one, I love that it has a Taylor Swift lyric in the title, and the premise sounds really fun. The main character is called Samantha, and that's all I really needed to know. It does sound like it's going to be very emotional. I'll put the full blurb here, but something about that calls to me. Like, I want a book that's going to make me kick my feet but also make me want to cry. That's what I'm in the mood for, at least. On the 3rd of April, we have Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. If you don't know Olivia Blake, she's an absolutely incredible writer. Her writing style is very unique, and the stories that she chooses to tell are also incredibly unique as well. I enjoyed the Atlas 6, didn't love the Atlas Paradox as much, and then never read the Atlas Complex. I also loved Alone With You in the Ether, One for My Enemy, which is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet retelling but set in New York with witchy gangs. Going into Gifted and Talented, this one sounds like another kind of like psychoanalysis that Olivia Blake does so well of her characters, but with a magical twist, as she always does. And it's about these 3 siblings who've always had a kind of rivalry, and when their father passes away, they're all left kind of trying to compete for the inheritance, and I think they all have like telepathy. So I'm excited to see how Olivia Blake delves into those family dynamics in this one. Also in April, we have A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayinde, and I begged for this book because I read the premise and I was like, please can I have an early review copy so I can get to it before it's out on the shelves, and they kindly sent me one. Thank you, Orbit. And the proof early copy has the sprayed edge. Hello, budget. They also sent me a signed one, which is so sweet. So the reason why I wanted to pick this up is because it has a really unique premise, and in this kingdom only those of noble blood can summon the spirits of their ancestors to fight with them in battle, and everything's kind of turned on its head when our main character, who is like a lowly commoner, like a peasant, somehow manages to invoke a spirit of her own, and this could be the key to stopping the century-long war forever. But the kingdom are about to find out that there is more than just your ancestors in the ancestral realm, and there's things that are much darker that could be crossing over that veil, and it just sounds so cool. It just sounds action-packed, and I can't wait to give you my thoughts on this one very soon. 8th of April is Enchantra by Kaylee Smith. I loved Phantasma. This book is Caraval but gorier, steamier, darker. It's a book that literally captured my heart when I read it, I think back in November, and I still think of it a lot because it was just such a fun read for me. And it's similar to Caraval in the sense that there's this like dangerous, deadly competition where people will go into it in order to try and win something. However, you may lose your life along the way. The second book here is about a different character that we meet in Phantasma, and I'm so excited for it. Honestly, I think if you're someone that really wants to explore dark romance or darker, spicy romance, then this would be the one that I would recommend because I had so much fun with it. There's a really good mystery element that runs throughout the whole story and a big plot twist at the end that I didn't see coming. So I'm excited to see what Kaylee Smith does in this second book. 24th of April is a big day. We've got A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I love that an Emily Henry book has been coming out like clockwork for years. I wait for April every year just to see what she's going to cook up next. I mean, Beach Read, You and Me on Vacation, Happy Place, Funny Story. Have I missed one? Have I missed one? Have I missed one? Happy Place, Funny Story. Imagine if I've like forgotten a glaringly obvious one. But I loved, I was going to say all of them, but I haven't read Funny Story. I started it, but then I haven't ever finished it. And I love the way Emily Henry balances her character story, emotion, and really well thought out character development, and how the couple always seem to grow together over the story. And I feel like all of her characters could be people I know, they could be like my friends. There's something so familiar and comforting about them that all of their stories resonated with me so much. much. A Great Big Beautiful Life obviously follows the Emily Henry recipe special, and we have our two main characters who are writers who I believe are trying to compete to tell this one person's story, and they go to the secluded place to try and like find out more information to write the best story they can. But the two have amazing chemistry and it's hard to be in the same room together. I think this one will be an excellent addition to Emily Henry's repertoire and I can't wait to get my hands on it. Also on the 24th of April we have The Dark That Hides Us by Andy Darcy Thea. If you're someone that loves YA fantasy, and especially if you want something kind of like middle grade / YA crossover, this series is perfect. The first book was The Light That Blinds Us and this is the second book. The magic is elemental based. We have these young kids who are all teaming up to basically save the world in Percy Jackson meets Harry Potter kind of vibe. The magic system is elemental based and we have these kids who are trying to like team up to basically save the world from darkness. There's found family, a really sweet romance, and it's very reminiscent of like Percy Jackson I feel in terms of its storytelling and its scope. So if you like the sound of that, then I think this is the series for you. Very excited to see what Andy Darcy Theo does in his sequel. We are on to May, and on the 6th of May we're going to be seeing Silver Elite. Silver Elite is by Danny Francis. I've already heard so many good things. All of my mutuals that have read this book have rated it 5 stars and that is very promising to me and I'm very excited. The whole premise is that it's very similar to the Hunger Games. It says here that psychic gifts are a death sentence and there are rules to survival. Trust no one, lie to everyone. And I'm definitely in the mood for something like action-packed and dystopian. Like we don't see a lot of dystopian stories kind of flying around. I mean, we had the golden era of the Hunger Games and Divergent and the Maze Runner, so I hope that this is leading the charge to something really exciting. And you know what, if all my friends say it's a 5 star, I really doubt that I won't enjoy this. On the 13th of May we have A Curse Carved in Bone by Danielle Jensen. This is the sequel to A Fate Inked in Blood, and then it will be a completed duology. So if you're someone that likes fantasy romance with a good element of spice but also a really unique magic system, I think you should read this one. I'm very excited for the sequel, and it's because the whole magic system revolves around all of the Viking gods, and there are magic that manifests in its people if you get given like a drop of God's magic. So we have our main character who has a special power that no one has ever seen, and she's taken to be used as a pawn for the king. However, for her to work on her magic, he instructs his son to be the one that teaches her how to wield her powers. And obviously there's tension there, but they can't be together, and it's forced proximity, it's training scenes, and I adored it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars and it was my first read of 2024. So if you're in the mood for something like that that's a little bit steamy and very fast paced, then you're going to love this book. All I can remember is like the very first chapter had me in bits. I honestly found it so funny and it was one of the most captivating first chapters of a fantasy book that I've read in a while. On the 20th of May we have The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillick, and you may know this author already. She wrote One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns and they really blew up online. Everyone loves them. They have a unique magic system that involves tarot, it has gothic vibes, a great romance, and our main character basically has like this really ancient demon living in her head and is like whispering to her things. So I'm really excited to see what Rachel Gillick is going to do in her adult debut, and the cover for this is very cool. I would definitely have my eye on this one. 27th of May we have A Fate Forged in Fire by Hazel McBride. I first heard about this one because the author is quite active on TikTok and has basically been sharing her story. She started out this story on AO3 and it was an Aemon Targaryen fanfic. So if you don't know Aemon Targaryen, he's one of the characters from House of the Dragon, which is a series that is related to Game of Thrones. And that story has now been picked up and it's been reworked to include a lot of Scottish mythology and folklore, because Hazel McBride is Scottish herself. But obviously keeping in that we've still got dragons, a feisty female main character, and hopefully a very steamy romance. If you're someone that likes those kind of like dragon fantasies reminiscent of Game of Thrones, but you want that fresh twist of Scottish mythology and folklore to be in there, then I think I'd have my eye on this. I am going to be reading this one very soon. I was lucky enough to get an early copy, so I'm super excited to see what this one's going to be like. Is this the day? Is this the day I finally finished this video? Maybe. Or maybe you're going to see another outfit change, another lighting change, and you're just going to have to go with it. Where did we even get up to last time? In June we have A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim, and Elizabeth Lim wrote Six Crimson Cranes, which I really adored. It came out a few years ago and it was a very, very magical read. This one is said to be a breathtaking romantic fantasy inspired by Beauty and the Beast about a girl who paints the future and a cursed dragon lord bound by love and deception in a plot to bring down the gods. And look at the cover. Just look at the cover. I mean, I think I prefer the US cover. I'll put the US and the UK cover on for this one, but I cannot wait to pick this up. I think Elizabeth Lim is a great writer. She does that magical, whimsical element so well, and I enjoyed the romance that she had in Six Crimson Cranes, so I'm excited to see how that manifests in this one. Like, what do you mean a girl who can paint the future? And a cursed dragon lord. Oh, I want it so bad! Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I'm so excited for this one because I loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I think this one is similar in terms of its style and its storytelling scope. I think this book is gay and I think it's vampires. Gay vampires. I'm into it. And it follows the story of three women who are born in different times, who are born in different countries. It says here that one is from 1532 in Santo Domingo, one's from London 1830s, and the other one is from Boston in 2019. And they all are buried in the same soil, and we watch their stories tangling like roots. I'm intrigued. I really don't know what to expect from this one. It has such a short synopsis, but this one's definitely on my list. I can't wait for June. Bring it on, V.E. Schwab. Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I loved her previous book, which was called 7 Year Slip, and I love that she's kind of used the magical realism elements of her romance writing as her selling point, because she carries it over to her third book, which is this one, and it's between a hit songwriter and a bitter musician. Our main character is trying to write another hit single, however she can't seem to get this one melody out of her head. In her head as well, she hears the person that sings this song and she thinks that he's just a figment of her overworked imagination, until one day she actually meets him. And it says here that he is nothing like the sweet funny voice in her head. He's aggravating and gruff on the outside, but the two can't seem to escape this song that's haunting them, and they have to work together to complete it. And I think that's such a beautiful concept. I loved it was by Julie Soto and it's called Not Another Love Song, and that one also had a musical element. They're both musicians and they create music together, but they also have insane chemistry, and I feel like this might give that same vibe, as in music can become so intense, it can connect you on another level. And I think this is just going to be really romantic, because I'm sure there's going to be a part that's going to make me cry, because I cried at The 7 Year Slip and I wasn't expecting to, because that book looked like a lemon meringue pie, but it served me a healthy dose of tears. July, July, July. This is the start of the Dramini trifecta forming in 2025, and a lot of people have talked about this. There are three very popular Dramini fanfics. So if you don't know what Dramini is, it's Draco and Hermione. They are a very popular ship on AO3, and there are three very popular fanfics that have been picked up for traditional publishing, and they're all getting published this year. So like the Dramini stans are losing their minds. So first up, wow, we have two on the same day. We've got Rose in Chains by Julie Soto and The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. Both I'm really looking forward to. So starting off with Rose in Chains, this one is set in a world where our main character is auctioned off to this very powerful family, and it's based off the fanfic that's called The Auction. Julie Soto I already know as a great romance writer. I loved Forget Me Not and I loved Not Another Love Song, so I can't wait to see her like move into this fantasy space and see what she does with the story. Like, I haven't read The Auction, but I know a lot of my friends love that fanfic, so I'm seated for it. Also in June we have The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley. This one sounds super fun. It's a slow burn enemies to lovers romantasy duology featuring a scholarly healer and a gentleman assassin set in an exquisite fantasy world, perfect for fans of The Love Hypothesis meets Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And I loved Emily Wilde. I mean, I've already talked about it in this video, but this one I think might be the most fun one out of the Dramini trifecta. This one seems a little bit more light-hearted, a bit more of a pick-me-up, whereas the other two are quite heavy. I mean, Rose in Chains is the main character getting auctioned off, and I mean, we'll come on to Alchemize, but that one's also very heavy. This one just sounds like pure fun. The main dude in this story is in dire need of healing, and the only one that can help him is this girl who is in an enemy order. So as the two work together to heal his illness and investigate the mysterious reoccurrences of a deadly pox, they find themselves ardently denying their attraction, which only fuels the heat between them. I've actually already begged the publisher for this book because I want to read it so bad. It just sounds like everything that I love. I mean, they've even got the tropes listed in this Goodreads synopsis. Enemies lovers, high interaction, slow burn, which I've never heard it described like that, but I love that. High interaction, slow burn. Yes. Hyper competent idiots. He falls first and falls harder. Evisceration. Evisceration. Guys, what does evisceration mean? Evisceration as a love language. That's one of the tropes. What does that mean? Disembowel? Surgery. Deprive something of its essential content. Someone's gonna need to explain that trope to me. I don't think I get it. 15th of July, we have The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst, and I read The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. If you're someone that likes cozy fantasy, this book is perfect. It's like Legends and Lattes, but it has a lot more romance in it, and this one sounds good. I think it's set in an interconnected world. What gets me about this one is it follows a main character who is very, very lonely and casts an illegal spell to create a sentient spider plant to basically like be her friend, and however in punishment she's turned into a wooden statue buried deep in the corner of a library somewhere. However, one day she wakes up on an island and the only person there that helps and shelters her is a very grumpy gardener, and the two I think have to do something to save the island. And it says here, funny, kind and forgiving, The Enchanted Greenhouse is a story about giving second chances to others and to yourself. I think this is going to be so good. I loved The Spell Shop. It tugged on my heartstrings and it was very wholesome, and I think this one will do the same. I love the idea of like this grumpy gardener and this girl who's made an incredibly big mistake that's affected her entire life, and the two working together to save this island that she's woken up on. I think that sounds really cute. For the next book, we have A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. I love Sangu Mandana. She wrote The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which is found family, super cozy fantasy, and it has a really sweet romance. And what I loved about it as well is that it's a standalone, and it has a lot about self-growth, self-love, accepting who you are. I keep saying that all of these books sound fun, but this one sounds really fun. It follows a main character who is Sarah Swan, and she used to be one of the most powerful witches in the whole of Britain until one day she resurrects her long dead aunt and is basically exiled from the guild. So she is now helping run an inn that belongs to her aunt, and the inn is a bit weird, it's a bit wacky, and one day a handsome hot guy, it says here he's an icy magical historian, he comes to stay at the inn and he's not interested with all the mad things that are going on there, but somehow he gets roped into helping Sarah with a spell that she's been working on. Running an inn, reclaiming lost magic and staying one a step ahead of the watchful guild is a lot for anyone, but Sarah Swan is about to discover that she doesn't have to do it alone. Oh, it sounds so cute, and the cover is so cute. I honestly think if you're looking for a really good standalone book, you should read either The Spell Shop or The Very Secret Society of Regular Witches. Both of them I loved so much. I just think cozy fantasies and books that are a lot more character driven have so much to say, and it's not always about all the action all the time. Sometimes you need a break, and you should go for one of these books because they made me smile from ear to ear, and I think you'll love them. So switching gears, we've got a new adult debut from Holly Jackson called Not Quite Dead Yet. I adore A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I loved Five Survive, and I really liked the reappearance of Rachel Price. I just think the Holly Jackson recipe is so special, and she knows exactly what readers love, exactly the beats of a story, what's going to get our hearts racing, what's going to shock us, what we're never going to see coming. And just to think that she's going to now be in the adult space, I think this is going to be explosive. I mean, it has an incredibly catchy hook. It says, in 7 days, Jet Mason will be dead. She is the daughter of one of the wealthiest families in Vermont. However, one day on Halloween, she is attacked by an unseen intruder and she's left with a catastrophic brain injury. The doctors are so certain that within a week she is going to suffer a deadly aneurysm. So she never really thought that she had enemies, but now when all of her family comes to visit her, she's thinking about them in a whole nother way. She is determined that she's going to solve her murder in time before anything happens to her, but I love that dynamic of like someone closest to you has done this to you and you don't know what their motivations are. So I think, oh my god, I just want it. When is it out? Oh my god, 22nd of July. I'm so stressed because I'm gonna have to take so much time off work to read all of these books. I think July might be my most anticipated month. Like, I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, I mean February looks insane, but like July is where it's at. 2 Dramini books, the new Holly Jackson, and 2 cozy fantasies that I've been looking forward to for ages. Oh my god, don't contact me in July. I am not meeting up with you. I am busy, I am seated, and I am reading 24 hours a day. On to August then. We have a very petite list. I've got A Theory of Dreaming by Ava Reid. This is the sequel to A Study in Drowning, and in this one I think our characters are still wrestling with what happened to them in book 1. Effie, our main character, is somehow losing her dreams, but Preston, the love interest, is getting lost in his. The first book, A Study in Drowning, is set in this like crumbling manor where our main characters are trying to unravel this mystery before the whole thing comes down. And for this one I'm still expecting those very like gothic vibes and like that very visceral feel of being there with the characters, but in this one I think we're going to be more in a dreamscape, and something about that makes me very excited because I think Ava Reid is so good at writing that really like eerie atmosphere, and to think that you can't trust the memories that you have, or you can't trust if you're in the dream realm versus the real realm, I think will be a very interesting concept to play around with. 19th of August, finally this book is coming out. It's called Once a Villain by Vanessa Len, and it's the 3rd book in the Only a Monster trilogy. I've loved Only a Monster for years. It's like Loki but make it urban fantasy. Our main character has this power to travel in time, but to do that she has to steal that equivalent time in life from other people. The guy that she used to be in love with is hunting her through time because he is essentially like this monster killer, and while she's running away she's also running away with her sworn nemesis. The love triangle of it all is incredible. I can't wait to see how the series goes out with a bang. I've loved the last 2 books. I just think the concept is really unique. Vanessa Len's writing is great. I will be very, very sad to say goodbye to these characters, but side note, I really hope she ends up with Aaron because I've never rooted for a blonde man before in a love triangle, but I'm rooting for him here. End of August we have Catabasis by Arif Kwong, and this woman does nothing but pull bangers and bangers and bangers out of the bag with each of her new books, and I think this one will be no different. It follows 2 students who venture into hell to find the soul of their dead professor to get him to write a letter of recommendation for them so that they can go on to study in the fields that they really want to study in. And I think that premise sounds really interesting. I've been so excited for this book since RF Kwang was mentioning it on her Yellow Face tour a few years ago, so I think this one will be one to look out for this year, and I think a lot of people are going to be talking about it. Firstly, in September I've got A Match Made in Hell by Charlotte Ingham on my TBR. This one sounds, once again, very, very fun, and it's about a girl who finds herself in a dimension that seems pretty much like hell. Like, she's basically in hell, and in order to try and get back to the land of the living she has to go through these 7 trials which are based off 7 deadly sins. However, she might find it harder than she thinks when she's falling in love with the devil himself. What a cool concept! This one sounds right up my street. I love a fantasy rom-com. Like, if it's gonna make me giggle and kick my feet, that's really all I want from reading a book like this. In September we are also seeing Stephanie Garber's adult debut, which is called Alchemy of Secrets, and I mean, I love Caraval, I love Once Upon a Broken Heart, and it will be sad to see her not return to that world at the moment, but it's also really exciting to see her do something different. Our main character Holland is hoping to use her thesis to rewrite her past by proving that some of the most infamous deaths in old Hollywood were actually murders committed by the devil. Okay, you've got me, Stephanie, you've got me. I will be reading this book because what the hell, how did you come up with this idea? It says that she has no idea that this quest will lead her into a deadly world of century-old secrets and unimaginable lies, and onto the path of 2 very dangerous men, both of whom are willing to do whatever it takes to find a magic that will either forever alter Holland's life or completely destroy it. Lock me up, because I am going to be going to Stephanie Garber's house and finding her laptop and sending myself this PDF right now. Also in September we have The Final Point in the Dramini trifecta, and that is Alchemized by Senlin Yu. This is based on a fanfic called Manacled, which I have actually started reading because I kind of want to see what they change between that one and this one, and how successful this adaptation is when it's no longer rooted in that like Harry Potter world. So if you don't know what Manacled is about, it's set in the aftermath of the final battle basically that you see in the Deathly Hallows, and it asks the question, what if Voldemort won the battle and all of the Order of the Phoenix are dead? Hermione has been locked up for years and she's like the only one left standing. Because she's been locked up for so long as well, she's managed to hide a lot of her memories, and basically everyone wants to find out what is she hiding and why has she hidden it. That's kind of like the main crux of Hermione's story, but then in this wider world as well, there's a big repopulation effort that is trying to boost the number of wizards, because after the war they obviously lost quite a few, so there's that kind of Handmaid's Tale vibe in it all as well. So at the moment Manacled is extremely brutal, and yeah, I'm just really interested to see how they kind of adapt it and make it work in its own like dark fantasy world. We'll be keeping an eye out for this one. I think in the meantime I will finish Manacled and I will be talking about it, and I think this is the start of many fanfics coming to us in the traditionally published space, and I'm not mad about it. My list in October is so short. I think all of the releases have kind of dwindled out, but I'll have to do another video when I discover more of the later releases coming out in 2025. But the first one I've got on my list is Firstborn of the Sun by Marvelous Michael Anson. I've had this one on my TBR for the longest time, and I do actually have an early copy, so I will be trying to read it early to get a review out for you guys. But in this world, our main character has a secret. She is the only one without Agbara, the ability to harness power from the sun. On pain of death, she must conceal it from everyone, including her best friend. When one day she's put under these circumstances where she has to try and use this magic, instead of light magic, what actually pours out is a shadow, icy power that she'll soon realise is forbidden and highly dangerous. It sounds like it has such a unique world, a unique magic system. I've met the author, she's so cool, and I think that this book is going to be awesome. I think it's going to be action-packed. I think the romance is going to be great. I'm just so excited to be reading a fantasy with Yoruba culture. I've read a couple in the past, including Blood Scion, but I've waited years for the sequel to that and it's still not out. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what Marv does in Firstborn of the Sun with this. I've put this one on here because I accidentally stumbled across it and I love Tasha Suri, and in October she's going to have a new book out called The Isle in the Silver Sea. It doesn't really have a proper synopsis, but it says here that it's a standalone, which I always love, about a knight and a witch who must change the fate of magic and the world by altering the end of their story. It's pitched as Green Knight meets the Starless Sea. And if you haven't read The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, please put it on your TBR. It is one of the best like politically driven adult fantasies I've ever read. You will not regret picking it up. Guys, in November the only thing I've got so far is Fallen Stars by Imani Eriyu. I have just finished Heavenly Bodies a few weeks ago and I'm so sad the second book isn't out. So if you want to put something on your TBR as a fantasy romance must read for this year, make it Heavenly Bodies. I mean, it's addictive. The romance is really the driving part of the story. So if you're someone that likes reading romance and you want to get into the fantasy space, I think Heavenly Bodies is the perfect place to start. And also, you've got a good few months before the sequel's out, but if you've already read Heavenly Bodies, then you know what, join the train. Like, come on, we're in the club together. And November's not that far. We will do this wait together. I think as well at the end of Heavenly Bodies the reveals are so crazy, so wild, that I'm really excited to see what Imani Eriyu does with the expansion of this world, what she does next with these two main characters and their romance story. Apparently this series is going to be 5 books. It's going to be 5 books, so by the time they're all out I'm going to be like 32. Oh my god! If you guys got to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped add some really cool books to your TBR and put them on your radar. If there are any books that you're excited about that I haven't mentioned in this video, please let me know about them. I may do a part 2, especially with the books coming out later on in 2025 that haven't been announced yet. In the meantime, you can catch me on Instagram, TikTok, Goodreads, Fable, where we've got a book club and we're reading a different book every single month, so please come and join that if that interests you. And I will be back very soon with another video.